In a chilling twist of fate, a mother's desperate plea unites unlikely heroes on a mission to save an innocent child. A race against time begins when a group of tough Hells Angels bikers discovers a blood-stained message on one of their Harleys. "Save my baby." As they navigate a web of secrets and hidden dangers to find the missing child, the seasoned bikers must confront their own pasts. If you believe that love knows no boundaries and that family is about choice, not blood, please hit that like button and share your thoughts below. Your support helps us share these powerful stories of human kindness. The metallic taste of blood filled Sarah Martinez's mouth as she crawled across the gravel parking lot, her vision blurring with each agonizing movement. The abandoned warehouse district of Phoenix lay silent under the moonless sky, save for the distant rumble of motorcycles from Murphy's garage 3 blocks away. Her ribs screamed with every breath, and she could feel warm liquid seeping through her torn jacket where the knife had found its mark. Emma. Sweet, innocent 6-year-old Emma, with her gap-toothed smile and pigtails. Sarah's heart shattered, remembering her daughter's terrified screams as those monsters dragged her away. "Mama!" The word echoed in Sarah's mind like a prayer and a curse combined. She had escaped, barely, but not before overhearing their plans. Tomorrow night, the docks, a boat to Mexico, where Emma would disappear forever into the nightmare world of human trafficking. The police wouldn't believe her. Not against Detective Morrison, not when half the force was on Vega's payroll. But she knew about the garage. Everyone in this neighborhood whispered about the Hells Angels who ran it, dangerous men with hearts supposedly made of stone. Her grandmother used to say that sometimes devils were the only ones who could fight devils. A massive Harley Davidson sat gleaming under a streetlight, its chrome reflecting her desperate face. With trembling fingers, Sarah dipped them into the growing pool of blood beneath her and began to write across the fuel tank, each letter a prayer written in crimson. "Save my baby." Her strength failed as she finished the final letter, collapsing beside the motorcycle. Darkness crept in around the edges of her vision, but she forced herself to stay conscious long enough to add one more desperate message on the concrete. Emma Martinez, age 6. Vega has her. Pier 47 tomorrow, 11 p.m. As sirens wailed in the distance, Sarah's hand fell limp. Her last breath carried a whispered promise. "I tried, baby girl. I tried." 20 minutes later, Marcus Steele Thompson emerged from Murphy's garage, wiping grease from his hands, his massive frame casting long shadows under the streetlights. At 45, he bore the scars of 2 tours in Afghanistan and 15 years with the Hells Angels Phoenix chapter. His steel-grey beard couldn't hide the permanent lines of grief that had marked his face since losing his own wife and daughter in a drunk driving accident 5 years ago. "What the hell?" Marcus stopped dead, staring at his pristine Harley now decorated with bloody handwriting. The police had already cordoned off the area, yellow tape fluttering in the desert wind like warning flags. Officer Jenny Rodriguez, one of the few clean cops left in the precinct, approached cautiously. "Sorry about your bike, Steele. We'll have it cleaned up soon. The victim was Sarah Martinez, 28, single mother. Someone worked her over pretty good before she died." Marcus's eyes traced the desperate message again, his jaw tightening. "What about her kid? Missing. Could be anywhere by now." Rodriguez lowered her voice, glancing around nervously. "Look, between you and me, this has Vega's fingerprints all over it. But Morrison's already calling it a random mugging gone wrong. Case'll be buried by morning. Not if I have anything to say about it." Marcus's voice carried the deadly calm of a man who'd seen too much death and decided to stop running from it. By dawn, Murphy's garage had transformed into an unofficial war room. Marcus sat at the scratched wooden table that served as their meeting space, surrounded by 8 of his closest brothers. The morning light streaming through grimy windows illuminated faces hardened by years on the road, each man bearing his own collection of scars and stories. Tank! Williams, a 300-pound mountain of muscle with gentle brown eyes, set down a steaming cup of coffee in front of Marcus. Despite his intimidating appearance, Tank had a weakness for stray animals and crying children that every member of the club knew and protected. "Boss says this ain't club business," muttered Jimmy Razor Kowalski, his thin frame, nervous energy personified. At 32, he was the youngest full member, still trying to prove himself worthy of the patch on his back. "Boss ain't here," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. As sergeant-at-arms and second-in-command, his word carried almost as much power as their president's, and everyone in the room knew it. Big Mike Patterson, their treasurer and father figure to the group, spread Sarah Martinez's background across the table. Worked double shifts at St. Mary's Hospital as a nurse. No criminal record, no drug connections, just a working mum trying to make ends meet. "Which makes her perfect prey for Vega's operation," added Carlos "Doc" Rivera, their medic and the most educated among them with his background as a former EMT. Single mothers, immigrants, anyone without strong family connections, they target the vulnerable. The Marcus studied the crime scene photos Rodriguez had quietly provided. Sarah's body told a story of desperation and determination that twisted something deep in his chest. The way she'd positioned herself near his bike, the careful formation of each blood-written letter, this woman had used her dying moments not to call for help for herself, but to save her daughter. "I know that look," Tank said quietly. "That's the same look you had when we found those kids locked in that meth house 3 years ago." "This is different," Marcus replied, though they all knew he was lying. Every rescue reminded him of the family he'd failed to save, the phone call that came while he was overseas, the funeral he'd missed because of deployment. "This time we're ahead of it. Kid's still alive, and we know where they're taking her." "Aiden." Razor fidgeted with his knife, nervous energy making him twitch. "Vega's operation isn't some small-time dealer's steal. We're talking about connected people, serious money, cops on the payroll. This could bring heat on the whole club. Then we keep it quiet and clean." Marcus stood, his presence filling the room like a storm gathering strength. No patches, no colors, no club involvement on paper, just a few concerned citizens looking out for a missing child. Doc raised an eyebrow. Concerned citizens who happen to own enough firepower to level a city block. Whatever it takes. Marcus's eyes held the cold fire that had earned him his nickname during countless battles overseas and on the streets. "That little girl has been missing for almost 12 hours. Every minute we waste talking is another minute she spends in hell." Tank cracked his knuckles, the sound like breaking branches. "What do you need from us, brother?" "Intelligence first. Doc, I need everything you can find on Vega's shipping schedules, security patterns, personnel. Tank, reach out to your contacts at the docks, longshoremen, security guards, anyone who might have eyes on Pier 47. "What about the rest of us?" asked Big Mike, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it spoken. Marcus walked to the window, staring out at the blood-stained concrete where a mother had died trying to save her child. "We get ready for war." The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly as Marcus's Harley rumbled through the rough neighborhoods of South Phoenix, each pothole jarring his already tense shoulders. Tank rode beside him on his custom chopper, both men wearing civilian clothes instead of their usual leather cuts. Anonymous predators hunting bigger prey. Their first stop was Elena's Diner, a small family restaurant where information flowed as freely as the strong coffee. Elena Morales, a 70-year-old grandmother with eyes like black steel, had fed both cops and criminals for 30 years while keeping her own counsel. "Mijo," she said, recognizing Marcus, despite his attempt at discretion, "you look like trouble walking." "Need to find someone, Elena. 6-year-old girl named Emma Martinez. Her mother died trying to protect her." Elena's weathered hand stilled on the coffee pot. In this neighborhood, dead mothers and missing children carried weight beyond words. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to a corner booth away from other customers. Tank squeezed his massive frame into the cramped space while Eleanor brought them plates of food neither had ordered. Eat first, talk after. Empty stomachs make poor decisions. As they ate, Eleanor moved through her restaurant with practiced efficiency, but Marcus noticed how she paused at certain tables, how conversations quieted when she passed. The Abuela network was already spreading the word. A child was missing, and someone would pay for it. Vega's people were here yesterday, Eleanor finally said, refilling their coffee cups. 3 men, the kind who think leather jackets make them tough. They were asking about families with young children, offering modeling opportunities for pretty girls. Marcus's grip tightened on his cup. You get descriptions? Better. I got license plates. Eleanor slipped a napkin across the table with 3 sets of numbers written in her precise handwriting. My grandson works at the DMV. Good boy. Helps his grandmother sometimes. Tank memorized the numbers before tucking the napkin away. Anything else? They mentioned a boat leaving tonight. Something about fresh inventory for buyers in Guadalajara. Elena's voice carried the controlled fury of a grandmother whose protective instincts had been awakened. They laughed about it, those animals, said American children brought premium prices. Marcus felt the familiar cold rage settling over him, the same focused fury that had carried him through firefights in Kandahar and street wars in Phoenix. But underneath the anger lay something else, a desperate hope that maybe this time he could save the child instead of arriving too late. Elena, if this goes sideways— It won't, she interrupted with the certainty of someone who'd survived revolutions and raised 6 children in poverty. My prayers are with you, but my grandson's baseball bats are closer. Word's already spreading. Vega's people won't find safe harbor anywhere in my neighborhood tonight. Back at the garage, Doc had transformed the break room into a technical command center, laptops and radio equipment spreading across every available surface. Good news and bad news, he announced as Marcus and Tank returned. Bad news first, Marcus said, accepting a beer from Big Mike. Vega's operation is bigger than we thought. I've identified at least 12 properties connected to his organization, plus a network of boats and trucks that move regularly between Phoenix, Tucson, and the Mexican border. Tank whistled low. That's a lot of territory to cover. Good news is simpler, Doc continued, pulling up surveillance photos on his laptop. Pier 47 is isolated, only 2 access roads, and the security is mostly for show, guards who patrol on predictable schedules. More importantly, I found building plans. There's a warehouse complex adjacent to the pier that's officially listed as abandoned, but shows recent electrical and water usage. Marcus studied the layout, his military experience automatically identifying choke points, escape routes, and defensive positions. How many hostages you think they're holding? Based on the facility size and Vega's usual operations, could be anywhere from 5 to 20 children, plus whatever adult supervision they use. Doc's voice carried professional detachment, but his hands shook slightly as he spoke. Steel. These aren't drug dealers or gun runners we're talking about. These people destroy children for money. If we go in loud, they might. They might kill the kids rather than lose inventory, Marcus finished, the words tasting like poison. Which means we go in quiet and we go in perfect. No second chances, no do-overs. Razor had been silent through the briefing, but now he spoke up. I know someone who might help. Girl I used to date. Works dispatch for Harbor Patrol. She owes me a favor. Might be willing to accidentally delay any official response if things get messy. Do it, Marcus ordered. Everyone else, final equipment check. We leave at sunset. Tank, I need you on overwatch with the Barrett. Doc, you're our medic and tech support. Big Mike, you and Razor take the north approach. What about you? Tank asked, though he already knew the answer. Marcus was staring at the warehouse photos with the focused intensity of a predator selecting prey. I'm going after Emma Martinez. That little girl's been waiting long enough for someone to come save her. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the garage in shades of amber and gold, 8 hardened bikers performed the ritual of preparing for battle. Weapons were cleaned and loaded, communication equipment tested, emergency medical supplies distributed. Each man understood that they were crossing a line tonight, moving from the gray areas where they usually operated into something darker and more dangerous. But as Marcus traced Sarah Martinez's blood-written plea one final time before covering his Harley, He felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years, the possibility of redemption. Tonight, he might finally save the child he'd been too late to protect before. Darkness fell over Phoenix like a heavy blanket as Marcus led his team through the industrial maze toward Pier 47. The desert air carried the scent of diesel fuel and salt water from the nearby canal, mixing with the tension that radiated from each man like heat from an engine. They'd split into 3 groups for the approach. Tank had positioned himself on a water tower 800 yards out, his Barrett, .50 caliber rifle providing overwatch and communications relay. Doc remained mobile in a stolen utility van, monitoring police frequencies and ready to provide medical support or extraction. Big Mike and Razor approached from the north, using shipping containers as cover, while Marcus took the direct route through the main warehouse complex. "Overwatch to ground team," Tank's voice crackled through their earpieces. "I count 6 guards on external patrol, predictable routes just like Doc called it. 2 more inside the main warehouse, plus unknown personnel in the basement level." Marcus crouched behind a rusted forklift, studying the target building through night vision scope. The warehouse rose 3 stories into the sky, its windows either broken or painted black. But light leaked from the basement level, and he could see shadows moving behind heavy curtains. "Movement on the north approach," Big Mike reported. "Panel van just arrived, 3 men unloading. Christ, they've got more kids." And through his scope, Marcus watched as 3 men in expensive suits herded 4 children toward a side entrance. Even at this distance, he could see the terror in their small faces, the way they huddled together for protection that wouldn't come. "Change of plans," Marcus whispered into his mic. "We can't wait for the boat. Too many kids, too much risk if we let this go down." "Steal, the plan," Razor started. "The plan just became saving every child in that building." Marcus cut him off, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Tank, I need you to disable that van. Make sure nobody's leaving early. Mike, Razor, hold your position until I give the signal." Marcus moved through the shadows like a ghost, years of combat experience guiding each step. The external guards were amateurs, more focused on looking intimidating than maintaining actual security. He reached the basement window just as voices echoed from inside, men speaking in rapid Spanish about delivery schedules and prices per child. Through a crack in the curtains, Marcus saw a scene that ignited every protective instinct in his body. 12 children, ages ranging from perhaps 5 to 15, huddled in makeshift cages along one wall. Emma Martinez sat in the corner cage, her dark hair matted with tears, clutching a small stuffed rabbit that must have been torn from her during the kidnapping. "Found our girl," Marcus whispered into his mic. 12 kids total, basement level. At least 4 adult hostiles inside, unknown weapons. "Copy that," Tank responded. "You want me to take the window guards?" Marcus studied the layout through the window. The cages were positioned directly beneath armed guards. Any firefight would put the children in immediate danger. But across the room, he noticed something that changed everything. A series of industrial pipes running along the ceiling with what looked like gas shut-off valves. "Negative on the shots. I'm going in quiet. Give me 60 seconds to get into position, then create a distraction at the front entrance." "Steal, that's suicide." Doc's voice carried professional concern, mixed with personal fear. "You go in alone. You might save the kids, but you'll never make it out." "Wouldn't be the first time," Marcus replied, already moving toward the building's service entrance. "Just make sure someone's alive to tell these children they're safe." The service door yielded to Marcus's lockpicks after 30 seconds of careful work, opening into a corridor that reeked of fear and human misery. He could hear adult voices from multiple directions, guards comparing notes, supervisors discussing tomorrow's shipment, someone speaking on a phone about product quality. Marcus followed the voices down a narrow staircase, every step carefully placed to avoid the creaks and groans that might alert the guards. At the bottom, a heavy metal door stood partially open, revealing the basement chamber, where Emma and 11 other children waited for rescue or death. Through the gap, Marcus counted 4 men with handguns, plus 2 more with assault rifles positioned near the children's cages. Too many for a direct assault, but the gas lines he'd spotted from outside ran directly overhead, if he could access the main valve. 60 seconds up, Tank's voice whispered through his earpiece. Marcus was about to respond when he heard footsteps above, someone coming down the stairs behind him. Without hesitation, he pressed himself against the wall just as a guard rounded the corner, assault rifle slung carelessly across his shoulder while he checked his phone. The man never saw the arm that wrapped around his throat or felt the precise pressure that cut off blood flow to his brain. Marcus lowered the unconscious guard silently, appropriating his weapon and radio before continuing toward the basement door. "Package in position," he whispered, meaning he was ready for the distraction. "Roger that." Show starts in 3, 2, 1. The explosion from the front of the building rattled windows and triggered car alarms throughout the industrial district. Marcus heard shouts from inside the basement as guards ran toward the commotion, leaving only 2 men watching the children. Emma looked up as Marcus appeared in the doorway, her 6-year-old eyes widening with hope and fear in equal measure. He held a finger to his lips, motioning for her to stay quiet as he worked his way along the wall toward the gas controls. "Who the hell are you?" "Buck." One of the remaining guards had spotted him, swinging his rifle toward the cages where 12 innocent lives hung in the balance. "Someone who keeps promises," Marcus replied, diving forward as gunfire erupted around him. The first gunshot shattered the basement's tense quiet like breaking glass, sending the children screaming and scrambling for whatever cover their small cages provided. Marcus rolled behind a concrete support pillar as bullets chipped chunks of stone around his position, the guards' wild firing revealing both panic and poor training. "Basement compromised," Marcus spoke into his mic between bursts of return fire. "Multiple hostiles, children in immediate danger. Need that distraction bigger and louder." "Copy that." Tank's voice carried grim satisfaction. "Big Mike, light up the fuel tank on that van. Time to wake up the neighborhood." The explosion from outside rattled the entire building, sending dust cascading from the ceiling and causing the lights to flicker ominously. Marcus used the momentary distraction to sprint across the open floor, tackling the nearest guard and driving both of them into a stack of wooden crates that splintered under their combined weight. The man was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 25, with the desperate strength of someone who knew capture meant either death or prison. They grappled for control of the assault rifle, rolling across the concrete floor while children sobbed in terror just meters away. "Please," Emma's small voice cut through the chaos, "please help us." The guard used Marcus's momentary distraction to land a solid punch to his ribs, following up with a knee aimed at his solar plexus. But Marcus had been fighting dirty since before this kid was born. He caught the knee, twisted hard, and drove his elbow into the guard's throat with enough force to crush his windpipe. The second guard had taken cover behind the children's cages, using them as human shields while he radioed for backup. "We're under attack down here. Send everyone. They're trying to take the merchandise." Merchandise. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow, reminding him exactly what these animals thought of the terrified children huddled before him. Emma pressed herself against the back of her cage, still clutching her stuffed rabbit, while tears streamed down her small face. "Overwatch to ground team," Tank's voice carried urgent warning. 3 vehicles approaching from the east, at least 12 men with military-grade weapons. You need to move now. Marcus studied the tactical situation with the cold calculation of a professional soldier. The remaining guard held a position that made him untouchable without risking the children. Reinforcements were minutes away. The building had only 2 exits, both now likely covered by hostile forces, but sometimes the best tactical option was the one nobody expected. Marcus pulled the pin from the smoke grenade on his vest and rolled it across the floor toward the guard's position. As thick gray smoke began filling the basement, he sprinted not toward the enemy, but toward the industrial gas lines he'd spotted earlier. Ground team, what's your play? Doc's voice carried professional concern mixed with personal fear for his friend. Bringing down the house, Marcus replied, using his knife to cut through the safety cables on the main gas shutoff valve. 60 seconds to get those kids out before this place becomes a crater. The valve wheel fought him at first, years of disuse making it stick, despite his considerable strength. Behind him, the guard fired blindly into the smoke, his bullets sparking off concrete and metal in deadly ricochets that could kill children as easily as enemies. "I can't see!" Emma cried out. "I can't see anything!" "It's okay, sweetheart," Marcus called back, finally forcing the valve to turn. Natural gas began hissing into the basement with a sound like an angry snake. "Cover your nose and mouth with your shirt. Help's coming." The guard's firing stopped as he realized what Marcus had done. "You're crazy. You'll kill us all." "That's the idea," Marcus replied, pulling the emergency fire axe from its wall mount and beginning to systematically destroy each cage lock. "Unless you want to help me get these children out of here." For a moment, the young guard hesitated. Marcus could see him through the clearing smoke, probably no older than some of the boys Marcus had served with overseas. A kid who'd made bad choices, but might still have enough humanity left to save innocent lives. Then more gunfire erupted from the stairwell as reinforcements arrived, and the moment of potential redemption vanished in muzzle flashes and shouted orders. "Emma!" Marcus called as he reached her cage, the gas fumes making his eyes water. "I knew your mama. She asked me to come find you." And the 6-year-old looked up at him with eyes far too old for her small face. "Is Mama okay?" Marcus's heart broke as he lifted her from the cage, knowing he couldn't lie, but unable to destroy what little hope she had left. "Your Mama loved you very much. She made me promise to keep you safe." "Promise?" "I promise," Marcus replied, gathering Emma and 2 other small children in his arms, while older kids helped the youngest ones toward the basement window he'd spotted earlier. "Tank, I need extraction at the northwest corner, basement level. 30 seconds. Roger that. Doc's moving the van into position now." Above them, the building groaned ominously as gas fumes reached the upper floors, where Tank's earlier distraction had left open flames. Marcus could hear the reinforcements spreading through the building, searching for him with increasing desperation. "Everybody out the window," Marcus ordered the children, boosting them one by one through the narrow opening into Doc's waiting arms. Emma went last, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. "What about you?" she asked as Doc lifted her toward safety. Marcus checked his watch. 20 seconds until the gas concentration reached critical mass. 15 seconds for him to clear the blast radius if he ran immediately. "Right behind you," he lied, knowing someone had to make sure the reinforcements didn't follow them out. The warehouse explosion lit up the Phoenix skyline like a falling star, the blast wave shattering windows for 3 blocks and sending a column of flame reaching toward the desert stars. Marcus emerged from behind a concrete barrier near the canal, his ears ringing and his jacket singed, but alive and whole enough to count as a victory. Doc's van sat idling 50 yards away, all 12 rescued children visible through the rear windows as paramedics and social workers began the long process of returning them to their families. Emma Martinez stood at the van's open door, scanning the smoke and flames with the desperate hope of a 6-year-old who'd already lost too much. "Mama's friend," she called when she spotted Marcus walking toward them, his massive frame silhouetted against the burning warehouse. "You came back." Marcus knelt to her level, accepting the fierce hug she threw around his neck. Over her shoulder, he could see Tank and the others emerging from their positions, their faces carrying the satisfaction of a job completed and enemies defeated. "I promised, didn't I?" Marcus said gently, checking Emma for injuries, while Doc handled the same examination for the other children. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Scared," Emma admitted with the brutal honesty of childhood. "The bad men said they were taking us far away, where no one would find us. They said our families wouldn't want us anymore." "They were lying," Marcus replied with absolute conviction. "Bad people lie because they're afraid of the truth. The truth is that your mama loved you more than anything in the whole world, and she made sure we would find you." Officer Rodriguez approached cautiously, her uniform rumpled and her expression mixing relief with professional concern. "The children are safe, the human trafficking ring is destroyed, and Vega's operation just lost its primary distribution hub. But we need to talk about how this happened." Marcus stood, his hand resting protectively on Emma's shoulder. "Anonymous tip led to a gas explosion during a police raid. Happens sometimes in old buildings with poor maintenance." Rodriguez studied him for a long moment, clearly recognizing the careful fiction they were constructing. "Anonymous tip, right? From concerned citizens who happen to have military-grade surveillance equipment and tactical assault experience. Lot of veterans in this town," Tank offered helpfully. "Community-minded folks who don't like seeing children hurt, especially when the official investigation was going nowhere," Big Mike added, his tone carrying just enough edge to remind Rodriguez which side had actually saved the kids. Before Rodriguez could respond, a black sedan pulled up with federal government plates. 2 FBI agents emerged, their expensive suits and cold expressions marking them as the kind of officials who measured success in statistics rather than human lives. "Special Agent Collins," the lead agent announced, flashing his badge, "will be taking custody of the rescued children for debriefing and processing." "Like hell you will." Marcus stepped forward, his massive frame blocking their path to the van. "These kids just escaped from a nightmare. They need medical attention, psychological counseling, and their families, not interrogation by federal agents. This is a national security matter involving international human trafficking," Collins replied, his hand moving casually toward his service weapon. "These children are material witnesses in an ongoing investigation." Emma pressed closer to Marcus's leg, instinctively recognizing threat in the agent's cold demeanor. Around the parking lot, the other rescued children began crying again, their temporary sense of safety evaporating in the face of new authority figures who saw them as evidence rather than victims. "Agent Collins," Rodriguez stepped between the federal agents and the children, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years protecting her community. "These children are local victims of local crimes, and they'll be processed through local social services. You want statements, you can schedule them through proper channels once they've received appropriate care." "Officer Rodriguez, you're interfering with a federal investigation." "I'm protecting crime victims," Rodriguez cut him off. "And unless you have specific warrants for specific children, you can discuss jurisdiction with my captain in the morning." Marcus felt Emma's small hand slip into his, her 6-year-old fingers gripping tight enough to leave marks. Around them, other children moved closer to Tank, Doc, and Big Mike, instinctively seeking protection from the men who'd rescued them rather than the officials who wanted to use them. "Agent Collins," Doc said quietly, his medic training evident in how he positioned himself between the agents and the most traumatized children. "These kids have been through severe psychological trauma. Any interrogation without proper preparation and counseling could cause permanent psychological damage. We have qualified personnel." "You have interrogators," Marcus corrected, his voice carrying the deadly calm that had made him legendary among both allies and enemies. "These children need healers. They need time. They need to remember that the world contains people who protect instead of people who use." Agent Collins studied the scene. 12 traumatized children clinging to the men who'd saved them, a local police officer blocking federal authority, and a group of bikers who'd just destroyed a multi-million-dollar criminal organization without breaking a single federal law. "This isn't over," Collins said finally, holstering his weapon and stepping back toward his sedan. "Yes, it is," Marcus replied with absolute finality. "For these children, the nightmare is over. They're going home." As the federal agents drove away and paramedics finished their examinations, Emma looked up at Marcus with eyes that held less fear and more hope than when he'd first found her. "Will I see you again?" she asked, as a social worker prepared to take her to a safe house where she could rest before being reunited with her surviving relatives. Marcus knelt again, this time pulling a small card from his wallet. "This has my phone number on it. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. And if anyone ever tries to hurt you again, you remember that you have friends who keep promises." Emma studied the card solemnly, then hugged her stuffed rabbit tight. "Mama told me about guardian angels. She said they don't always look like the ones in picture books." "Your mama was a very smart woman," Marcus agreed, watching as Emma joined the other rescued children for transport to safety. As the convoy of social services vehicles disappeared into the Phoenix night, Tank appeared at Marcus's shoulder. "Hell of a thing, brother. 12 kids going home instead of disappearing forever." Marcus stared at the smoldering warehouse where Sarah Martinez's final message had started a chain of events that saved 12 young lives. "Think she knows?" he asked quietly. "What's that?" "Think Sarah Martinez knows we kept her promise?" Tank considered this with the seriousness it deserved. "I think mothers always know when their children are safe, and I think some promises are worth more than the people who make them." Marcus climbed onto his Harley, the motorcycle's chrome still bearing faint traces of a desperate mother's blood-written plea. As he kicked the engine to life, he felt something he hadn't experienced since losing his own family, the possibility that redemption wasn't just for other people. Sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerged from the darkest places. Sometimes devils really could fight devils. And sometimes, when everything else failed, the promise written in a dying mother's blood became the thing that saved innocent lives and hardened hearts alike. The Hell's Angels rode into the desert dawn, carrying with them the knowledge that 12 children would grow up free because someone had remembered that protection of the innocent transcended every other law.